All right, so let's talk about how to solve multi-step equations. We've already done one step and two step, where basically the premise is to move all of the terms away from the variable. So in other words, you're isolating the variable. But now with multi-step equations, there could be a little bit more nuance, not that much more complicated, just might take a little longer. So for our first example, we have negative 10 equals negative 3x minus 2x. Now, this is only a multi-step equation because of the fact that you have these two like terms right here that need to be combined first. So I will simply rewrite this as negative 10 equals negative 3x minus 2x is just negative 5x. And so now, to find out what x is, I need to move this negative 5 to the other side of the equation, which I'm going to do that with division to get rid of the multiplication. And so negative 10 divided by negative 5 is going to be positive 2. So that means that x is positive 2. So for a problem like 5 equals 2 minus 3x plus 3, all we're doing here is combining the 2 and the 3 because those are like terms in the same room. So I'm going to rewrite it as 5 equals 2 plus 3 is 5. So that's 5 minus 3x. And so now to move this 5 into the other room, I'm going to subtract 5. So 5 minus 5 is 0. So 0 equals negative 3x. So 0 equals negative 3x. To move this negative 3 off of the x, to move it to the other room, I'm going to get rid of multiplication with division. So I'm dividing by negative 3. 0 divided by negative 3 is still 0. So 0 equals x, and so x equals 0. So now what happens when you have an equation where there are variables on both sides? This seems to be very complicated, but it's really not. All you're going to do first is get all of your variable terms into the same room and all of your constant terms into the same room. So for example, I would take this 2x over here, so this plus 2x over here, and I would move it into the 10x room over here because I'm going to move the smaller one into the larger one. That's just kind of the common sense way to do it. So to move the plus 2x out of the room on the right and into the room on the left, I'm going to subtract 2x because I always do the opposite of what I see. So that leaves me with 10x minus 2x is 8x minus 4 equals negative 5. Then I would do the same thing with the minus 4. So to move this minus 4 into the other room, I'm going to do the opposite of what I see, which is instead of subtracting 4, I'm going to add 4. And so that leaves me with 8x on the left, which equals negative 5 plus 4, which is going to be negative 1 on the right. So now, all I have to do is to focus on getting the 8 out of the room. Since 8 was attached to x with multiplication, I'm going to move it with division. So I'm going to divide by 8 on the other side. And so x is just negative 1 over 8. So how will we solve this one? Same idea. In this case, I'm going to move the minus 6x from the right room to the left room because negative 6x is actually smaller than positive x. So to move the minus 6x out of the right room, I'm going to do the opposite, which is adding 6x. So x plus 6x is really 1x plus 6x, which is 7x. I still have the plus 6. I haven't moved it yet. Equals just the positive 6 that's left over. Now, I can move this plus 6 away from the x. And so now I have 7x equals 6 minus 6, which is 0. Again, doing the opposite of addition with subtraction. So now, to get the x by itself, I need to move this 7. The opposite of multiplication is division. So x is 0 divided by 7, which is 0. And so x is 0. So to solve a problem like 3x minus 3 equals 8x, again, I'm going to move the smaller variable term into the room of the larger variable term. It just works out better. You end up getting positive numbers instead of negative numbers. Makes it a little easier. So to move the 3x into the 8x room, I do the opposite of a positive 3x, which is a minus 3x. And so that leaves me with negative 3 in the room on the left equals 8x minus 3x, which is 5x. And so now, to find out what x is, I need to move the 5 off of x. I move that, getting rid of multiplication with division. So I'm dividing by 5 to get x by itself. So negative 3 over 5 is the value of x. And x is negative 3 over 5. If x minus 2 equals 4x plus 2x minus 4, then we're just combining the different skills that we have. We know that we can combine these x's together, so 4x plus 2x gives you 6x. I bring down the minus 4, so now x minus 2 equals 6x minus 4. Now I want to move the smaller variable term into the room with the larger variable term. So to move a positive x, I'm going to subtract x. So that means now 6x minus x is 5x minus 4. I still have a negative 2 in the left room. So now to move everything away from the variable, I'm going to start with the minus 4, move it to the other room. That's addition by 4. Negative 2 plus 4 is going to give me a positive 2, which is still equal to 5x. And so now to move this 5 off of the x, to get rid of multiplication, I'm going to divide by 5 on the other side. So 2 over 5 equals x. The final value for x is 2 over 5.
In the case where there is a negative sign attached to the parentheses, well, it's not really a difficult concept. At the end of the day, all you need to do is be mindful that that negative sign is really just a negative 1. And so you're ultimately going to write it out as negative 5 equals negative 1 times x plus 3. And so now you can go ahead and move the negative 1 with division to get rid of the multiplication. So you're dividing by negative 1. Negative 5 divided by negative 1 is 5. Since the negative 1 is gone, the x plus 3 can come down because there's nothing else attached to the parentheses anymore. And so from there, I need to move the plus 3, move it to the other side with subtraction. So I subtract 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. And so since 2 is x, that means x is equal to 2. If 15 equals negative 5 times negative 2x minus 4, again, my priority is to get x by itself. So here, I'm simply going to move the farthest thing from the variable, which is a negative 5. I'm moving it to the other side with division to get rid of the multiplication. So I'm dividing by negative 5 on the other side. 15 divided by negative 5 equals negative 3. And from there, since nothing else is attached to the parentheses, everything else can come down. So negative 2x and minus 4 come down. And so now, to find out what x is, I'm going to move the minus 4. The opposite of subtraction by 4 is addition by 4. Negative 3 plus 4 gives me positive 1. So 1 equals negative 2x. So now to find out what x is, I'm going to move the negative 2 off of x. Since negative 2 is being multiplied by x, I'm simply going to divide by negative 2 to get rid of it, or to move it to the other side. And so since I'm dividing by negative 2, 1 over negative 2 is simply negative 1/2. So x is negative 1/2. Here we have negative 12 minus 4x equals 3 times 2 plus 4x. What's significant about this problem is that normally we would divide by 3 first, but since there are two terms on the left side of this equation, it's actually more efficient to use the distributive property to get rid of the parentheses. So instead, we're going to multiply everything inside this parentheses by 3. So 3 times 2 and 3 times 4x. So 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 4x is 12x. Since that 12x is a positive, it's going to be a plus sign in between. Bring down the minus 12. Bring down the minus 4x. And so now, to find out what x is, we first need to combine the like terms. So I'm going to move this minus 4x over to the other side by adding 4x. The opposite of subtraction is addition. That gives me 16x. The 6 comes down. Nothing has changed. So that's 6 plus 16x on the right side equals, since the minus 4x is gone, I need to move this negative 12 down. And now I need to solve this two-step equation by first moving this 6 to the other side with subtraction because it was positive. Negative 12 minus 6 gives me negative 18, which equals 16x. And so now to find out what x is, I need to move the 16. Since I'm multiplying 16 by x, I divide by 16 on the other side. Negative 18 divided by 16, I can simplify that as a fraction to be negative 9 over 8, which is x. So x is simply negative 9 over 8.